everyone. Welcome to Triple V. Today I'm joined by Rob Matthias, also known as the Voluntary Rebel. And Rob, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. It's a great morning today. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain. I'm glad to have you on the show because we got quite a few topics to discuss. I guess you can't really summarize voluntarism in 5 minutes, but before we jump into the real details and the bulk of this, can you guys kind of give the listeners and viewers a little bit of background on who you are, where you came from, and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, first, I would like to say, I'm an individual. I don't have, a huge background into this. I'm coming from just me doing my own personal research and whatnot. My work history, I've worked in sales and retail and whatnot, and I'm really passionate about liberty. The last year, I've been kind of going down the rabbit hole in Mar. I got involved with doing some local Ron Paul stuff, like doing meetups, sine waves. I helped go to. They did a huge Ron Paul St. Patrick's Day stuff I was involved in, and did petitioning and get him on the ballot. Just that's part of going down the rabbit hole. But after this year, I finally literally the last couple months let go of that last rung of statism, and when you let go, it's like you're freeing your mind, and I didn't want to wait any longer, just reading and researching and whatnot, and I just want to do my small part to express what voluntarism or voluntaryism is and what freedom really means to the individual. And the best way I can think about it for right now is just throwing short little clips on YouTube of what I think of different issues are revolving around voluntarism.
Yeah, definitely. Most people had to go through that process. I did too, years ago. And
I've been down this road for about 6 years.
Yeah, and it takes a while. I mean, some people it never even reach voluntarism. They don't even get to understand it to that principle. So I'm glad that you were able to at least take the non-aggression principle to its rational conclusion. That's always nice to see.
Yeah, I'm new to it, so.
Yeah, definitely. I know you're out of Chicago now too, and you're 29 years old, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. How'd you get into Chicago?
Born and raised. I live on the south side, in the South Burbs and whatnot. I moved different areas. It's I am such a huge minority here. First up, I was a libertarian before. Now I consider myself a volunteer. It's like a voluntarist anarchist. It's like every person I know is a statist, hardcore. And just talking to them about it it's like I'm talking to a wall. It's sad. It's sad.
Yeah, there's we're up against a lot of indoctrination. I mean, the public school system takes in about 55 to 60% of the kids in our region, our peers, and they teach them revisionist history. They can't teach or talk about the non-aggression principle to its rational conclusion, or else they'd expose themselves for the taxation fraud and the monopoly or at least oligopolization that they're responsible for. But go ahead real quick. How would you define voluntarism? If you could bundle it up into a little box of 2 minutes, how do you like to get across the message of voluntarism to these people that don't know about it?
My channel is really dedicated to patriots and libertarians because they're still holding on to the statism and still think about liberty. So I'm kind of trying to wake those people up. But I have this flag behind me, the Gadsden flag. That's my motto. Don't tread on me. Leave me alone. Plain and simple. That's kind of, and you want it in a nutshell, as small as possible. Leave everyone else alone. Don't use force and coercion against other people for practicing freedom. As long as they're not hurting your life or liberty or property, don't mess with them and don't mess with me.
A live and let live philosophy.
Yeah, live and let live.
Yeah, consensual only. No, it makes perfect sense. That's what I support too. For everybody who might be joining us for the first time, what is this nonsense? This treasonous George Washington that you expound upon in your videos. Go ahead and talk about that. Yeah.
Well, I kind of feel like I'm tired of sugarcoating our American history, and I always consider myself a constitutionalist. I used to be a huge patriot, go USA, and the more and more I read about history and actually look at what happened and whatnot, it's just everything's been a lie. I'm from public school as well. I was indoctrinated, and you got to break all that. And when you look at the history of everything that's going on, with George Washington, everyone's talking about how Obama's a tyrant. Yeah, he is, but where did he get that power, that authority? All right, it was. I mean, if you look constitutionally wise, it was through precedents that every president does something, and so because that earlier president did it, I can do it. Like case in point, Obama does a lot of stuff because Bush did it, but Bush did stuff prior to, and so forth and so on. So I was looking at George Washington, and the biggest thing that he did was the Whiskey Rebellion. He literally sent. He personally commanded 13,000 militia to squall 500 protesters. That'd be the equivalent of Obama sending. Say there's 5,000 Wall Street protesters and Occupy Wall Street. That'd be the equivalent of him sending 130,000 National Guard to disperse them. And like if you did the math, and he's overwhelming force to stop people from not paying taxes.
Yeah, you're referring to the Whiskey Rebellion, I believe, correct?
Yes, the Whiskey Rebellion.
Yeah, good stuff. And I completely agree with you. Obviously, it's so funny too because these founding fathers, many of them who supposedly were for freedom, owned slaves. I mean, it's kind of, there's this picture that came out one time and it had Lysander Spooner and it had Thomas Jefferson, and it's kind of said Jefferson talk and then Lysander Spooner walk. So, Jefferson talked the talk, but even during that same time, there's another guy who didn't join into politics, who still wrote educational materials, and he really expounded on Indian slavery too, and that was Lysander Spooner. And he does mention, like you're talking about with the Constitution, the Constitution has no authority. It's not like you and I ever signed that document. It died with the people who signed it years ago. Not only that, we are under no social contract. Correct. How much do you know about the social contract? I'm sure you've heard.
Okay. No one ever asked me to pay for all these wars, all this murder, all this theft. No one ever asked me. I was never consented. I never signed a contract. My property's stolen from me by force, and if I don't, I'm thrown in a cage.
But Rob, you are the government. You can go in and vote for the system and make all this change. What do you respond to most people who give you that fallacious argument?
I usually tell them, look, it doesn't matter how justified or compassionate the reasons are for them to do it, but compassion at the barrel of a gun is not compassion. Any good idea doesn't need a gun pointed at your head to do it. Like, I'm all in favor of supporting charities and organizations that help the needy and whatnot, and if I had more money, and a lot of people had more money to do so, they would do it. They would do stuff because they want to do it, not because they have a gun pointed at their head. Yeah,
think about that from what economists call opportunity cost. Every time that the system taxes or raises debts, which is a future tax, or inflates our dollar through the printing press / typing ones and zeros into a computer system, all they're really doing is taking out money from the productive sector, dollar for dollar, and maybe only reinvesting about 30 cents on the dollar. Some say it can go up to as 40 cents on the dollar. So people only look, it's the broken window fallacy, right? You only look at the stuff you're doing right there in front of you. The politicians always flamboyantly giving you stuff while quietly taking it away from you on the side. That's how politics seems to work. Going back to the Constitution, with the Constitution, you obviously agree then that the Constitution has either created and enabled the government to get to this size, or it was useless in stopping it, correct?
I agree, and both. Article 1, Section 8, the first line, the fact that they can tax should never have been in there. I mean, that right there allows them to do whatever they want because they're getting money to do it. You're giving people money to do something. But I also would agree to the other side of the coin that people just disregard it. If the government can't follow their own laws, why should we follow their laws? Like 90% of what, probably say 99% of what Congress does is unconstitutional. So.
Yeah, well, like I tell everybody today, it wouldn't even pass a congressional, let alone a Senate committee, let alone get to the congressional or Senate floor to vote on. The thing would be washed up, revised. I mean, nobody would even propose it. Maybe Ron Paul would, but that's just about it. Nobody would even propose it. And I don't want to knock on the Constitution for being some anti-freedom document, because really it was a step for the time period we're looking at back in the day. It was obviously a step forward, but now we can look at it going forward and realize that you can't give people the right to abuse and steal and threaten and terrorize other people and then expect this little Constitution to stop them from going outside of. I mean, you give criminal abilities, they're going to obviously take advantage of that, and criminals are going to seek government to go into. Let's go on to. I want to move on to Bitcoin real quick. I'm not sure how much you know about Bitcoin, but Roger.
I am new to Bitcoin.
Okay, no problem. We can have a little discussion about it. Roger Ver wants me to ask you how Bitcoin will help end the violence of the state. So basically, stopping the monopolization of fiat currency. Go ahead.
I love Bitcoin. I literally just bought my first Bitcoin about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and still trying to get into it, do more. Like, I actually have Bitcoin donation if you want. I'm trying just to, expand my operations here. I would love to actually do more stuff as well. But I don't want to use dollars. I want to get off the Federal Reserve System completely. If I could get my job, my day job, if I could get them to pay me in Bitcoin, I would. I would love anything we can do to opt out of the system and operate outside of it is a plus in my book.
All right, well, let's talk about this for a second here. There's a lot of people want to just end the Fed. I hear chants all the time of people trying to end the Fed. This is in correlation with, for people who don't know what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is an international/internet currency that is not controlled by government. See, if you tried to start up a gold bullion or have a competing currency out of your house, or start up a business and try to, preserve the value of the dollar greater by having this commodity service out there, this medium of exchange, the government will come to your house and arrest you. So you're not allowed to have competing currencies, and legal tender laws are kind of an indirect route at oligopolizing, or especially monopolizing the money system, forcing us to use and accept FRNs wherever we are, if we're going to be licensed with a business. So, going back to Bitcoin, Bitcoin is nice because what it allows us to do is break away from any of these central planners. So we can have a currency that we know will hold its value much more stably over the years to come, whereas government, all they can do is inflate the dollar. You look just over the last 100 years, what is it, about 3.5 cents is what our dollar's worth compared to the dollar 110 years ago? Or about, actually, 100 years. Yeah, this year is going to be the 100-year anniversary of the Fed, right? So, anyway, yeah, good stuff. Looking at this from the Federal Reserve, the question I have for you is, do you believe you can actually end the Federal Reserve without ending statism, without ending the government? My fear is that, let's say we end the Fed, these ass jerks are just going to find a way to twist around or make their own central planning system. They're not going to give up their monopoly that easily. You understand what I'm getting at?
Oh, I exactly what you're saying, and I used to be a huge end the Fed person. I guess I still am, but I would rather just us get off the Federal Reserve and get off the U.S. dollar completely. But I would throw this out there. Using the term end the Fed is kind of like a red pill to people about the monetary system, because they'll then start investigating and they'll go down that rabbit hole as well, and they'll come to our conclusion as well. So me saying like end the Fed and whatnot, or talking about the Federal Reserve, yeah, I would actually rather just completely disregard it and not even acknowledge it. But saying end the Fed is just pretty much bringing up to people that it exists.
Yeah, I like that fact, and I agree with you. I want to end the Fed. Don't get me wrong. I just don't want to have it done in government. You know what I'm saying?
I don't want to give the government authority to end something because they shouldn't have created it to start with. But yeah. I see what you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It is kind of almost like voting in the system to change statism. Anyway. Let's move on here. I do have. So this is really a serious topic to me because there are people who are innocent people. I want people to understand this. They're innocent. Tons of innocent people that have never had due process, they never went through a jury or any of this, that are being drone bombed and just basically are evaporated and murdered overseas. We don't see it because it's thousands of miles away. I'd like to hear your spiel on standing armies and militarism and war and that whole encompassment.
I'm against any kind of standing army. Say even we cap the government as it is. I don't think we should have a standing army or an empire across the world. We shouldn't be bombing or killing anyone overseas for defending their own land, or just using robots in the sky to drop bombs on innocent people. If you wanted to keep a government, which I don't, we shouldn't have a standing army. Every person should be able to defend themselves. I believe in really self-government, but even if we wanted to keep a government and have a military defend our borders, we shouldn't have a standing army, because if you look at everything they're doing. The government's doing. They're militarizing the police. They're you got National Guard everywhere. This president signs the NDAA that allows them to use the military to indefinitely detain any American citizen. No, I'm not for a standing army whatsoever.
Well, here's another thing too. A lot of, especially on the Republican side and some Democrats. I don't want to be too biased because really they're almost all the same thing to me.
Yeah, they're the same. Yeah.
But a lot of them seem to believe that their independent troop, like if I was talking to a mother or father of a troop, they would tell me, oh, well, if we had a big scenario, my son would never just follow orders. He would protect freedom. And my question to them is, well, why isn't he protecting my freedom right now then? Because technically, just to have him, I am forced at gunpoint to fund your son. Do you not see anything unethical with that? Going away, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is the troops themselves, even like in 2005 when the U.S. Supreme Court basically stated that the police have it is not their duty to protect you, only to follow orders. This is the mentality I think a lot of people don't realize what the troops did. I mean, you look at almost every government that does something bad and you have a troop doing something, those people were just following orders. What do you think about the whole excuse of just following orders?
It's not an excuse. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you. You are an individual. It's not, you can blame the government, blame, politicians and whatnot for doing it. But at the end of the day, the person pulling the trigger, the person holding that gun is the real person that's really responsible for their actions.
Well, Adam Kokesh had a video come out the other day, and it basically had a troop just standing there.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, he was just standing there, and every time they asked him, well, what do you think about it? Oh, whatever you think, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, the guy has no brain for himself. He's been trapped. Statism has taken his mind and put it in this box. Hell, what they did is they lit it on fire after dumping gas on it. He has no mind of his own anymore. It's been completely eradicated. So this guy is just so lost in the world. Don't you see...
That,
go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. I was going to say, that's why Oath Keepers is such a great organization. Like, I'm not in favor of them supporting the fact that we still have a government, but the fact that they're trying to wake up the military, because they're the ones that would, bring the hammer down when, if it really there is such a collapse or whatnot, that's not peaceful. Oath Keepers is like whenever I meet any veteran or active service person, I always tell them, just please check out Oath Keepers. Don't shoot at American citizens.
Yeah, it would be nice if they wouldn't shoot at anybody, but I agree with you. If we can get them from at least turning on their own, that's going to be a huge step down the road, and hopefully we don't have to run into that problem. Moving on from here, Chase Rachels and Justin Stout have started up the Liberty Restoration Project over here in Asheville, and I'm sure you're obviously familiar with the Free State Project. What are your thoughts about people moving to these places? Do you support them without moving? What are your thoughts on these institutions and organizations?
To be honest, I'm looking at the Free State Project, and I would love to. It's hard just to pick up and move. You know what I'm saying? You just, you're really tied to your community or where you're working, and you can't just walk away and go. But I would love at some point to probably move to the Free State Project. I'm not against anyone else creating other projects as well, but it seems like the Free State Project is the one that possibly has the most success, or could potentially have the most success compared to everything else that's going on. Just for a simple fact of where they are, the location, New Hampshire, the small population density and whatnot.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. If you're going to make a state freer, the smaller the population of statists around you obviously has some kind of an effect on that, a direct effect. But the Liberty Restoration Movement. The one thing I have about New Hampshire, between you and I, well, I guess everybody else now, is that New Hampshire's a little too cold for my taste. I was there in the last summer, and we went to Porkfest, and it was fine in July and June and the rest of that. But right now, it is freezing cold. I'm sure you know.
Well, it is snowing outside my window right now in Chicago. So I've grown up with a cold. I'm not exactly not used to it.
See, I was born and raised in San Antonio. So
oh well.
Yeah. December, our winters over there are 70 degrees. If that's the coldest. Anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I just want to say, actually ask you a question. MCEJ asks, how do you believe we can inform other people about what statism really is? What's the best venue source? So maybe, obviously you're starting videos on YouTube. You've done a couple of them, probably about 12 or so at this point that I've seen. And, what obviously you think that's going to be beneficial and valuable because you're putting your time into it. You're putting where your mouth is. What other things are there to do, or is videos on the internet one of the best things? That's what I've come to the conclusion on. It's one of the best things. I mean, obviously we can go out there and hand out flyers and the rest of that stuff too, which is good. What do you think we should really be focusing on? Maybe the top 3 things.
Top 3. I would say first and foremost, talk to people. Don't. Just because it's unpopular doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about it. Like, to be honest, I've probably lost friends talking about liberty because they're tired of me talking about it. But it's something that needs to be discussed with people. You know, we need to have adult conversations. So, you know, stop talking about whatever was on TV last night and start talking about why someone's pointing a gun at your head. You know, but for me, just making a YouTube video, anyone can do it. Like, I'm personally honest, I'm not doing this even with a computer. I'm using my smartphone. That's it. I throw it up there, record, publish. You know, it's not like I need a whole huge studio to even, you know, express my ideas to other people, you know, and hopefully someone shares, you know, they find something that I not enjoy, but something I'm talking about that motivates them, and they'll share it with somebody else and so forth, and that'll make them make their own video or make their own, you know, blog or something, just to share the information and spread it as fast as we can.
Yeah, and you know, this is my 2 cents here, everybody. When you have somebody who you might push away when you bring up the message of freedom or self-ownership or non-aggression or voluntarism or whatever you want to call it, individual freedom, if you have somebody that pushes you away, that's usually a sign that that person is unwilling to accept fact and reason and rationality, and it's usually a signal that you might not be able to trust that person. If they can't even come to the conclusion that you own yourself and that you are a peaceful person that should be able to do whatever you want as long as you don't infringe on others, if they can't even accept that fact and keep their hands laissez-faire off of you, let alone the economy, you know, it might be best just to let those people kind of move on to the wayside and find better friends. I think I, at least, have found better friends in this community, and, you know, this is going to last for a lifetime. So,
no,
yeah.
I completely agree. One of the videos I saw that really helped push me to let go of anything statism was Stefan Molyneux's How to Deal with the Statist, where he basically goes on like a 20-minute like yelling rant, which normally he doesn't in his videos, but in that one he did, and it just like woke me up. Like, yeah, I have friends that support the drug war. You know, if I have some pot on me, they would literally are advocating that someone come to my house, point a gun in my head, and throw me in a cage just because they disagree with what I'm doing in my own house. I'm like, I can't have friends anymore that would support violence against me.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. If you don't even bring up these facts to your friends, how are they going to be able to know what you're going through and understand the real world, really, about, you know...
Oh, yeah.
You know what's going on. Anyway, good stuff. I completely agree with everything we just went over there. Dylan Johnny Niet, he wants me to ask you, as he says, he said this on Twitter too, but just in case, what you think are the most important virtues we should cherish to achieve a voluntary society? So internal virtues and ethics. What would you say are some of the top virtues and ethics we should embrace? Obviously, other than non-aggression principle. That's kind of a cheat. I couldn't let you just have that one.
Oh, yeah. Besides non-aggression, you know, just peace and love. I mean, love your neighbor. Why would you advocate violence against somebody, you know? I mean, if you don't think it, like, statists don't think they're advocating violence, but they are. I'm advocating love. Love your neighbor. You should advocate loving everybody, regardless if they're American or not either. You know, we shouldn't, because everyone's a human being on this planet. You know, we all are humans, and we all should love each other, regardless of who we are.
Yeah, you know, one thing I'd like to say, too, is individuals, sometimes I see people, and I used to be this way, too, and I'm sure when you were in the political sector, you might have been this way, too, Rob. We get a little heated, and we get into it, and maybe Stefan, like, he usually doesn't yell. There's a reason for that. You know, we got to keep our calm, we got to keep our composure, and bring only facts to the table, so we need to be honest with everything that we present, bringing something up, you know, that might be, and I don't want to knock on all conspiracy theories, because there's a lot of people out there who are actually researching stuff that might actually be true, and there's a lot of just wasteful conspiracy theories out there too. But we want to bring honesty to the table and do so with a loving attitude, a caring attitude, that we care about others. In fact, this is what I always tell people, you know. People say, well, libertarians are so selfish. They're always so selfish. It's always me, me, me. And I say it's the complete opposite. Statism is the me, me, me. Let me control you. Let me control you. Let me control you. Whereas voluntarism says, hands off. I respect you and am unselfish enough to give you your freedom. That's what the real voluntarist message is.
Oh,
so,
I completely agree.
Yeah, good stuff. I also want to ask you, Kelly Diamond actually had a great question here. She goes, pointers for disengaging the state in our daily lives. I'm always down with new and innovative, but nonetheless nonviolent ways to unstate myself in deed or action. Obviously, we can move to the Free State Project. We can make more videos. What is it, though, that would be able, if you could list off a few things, like maybe getting off the grid or something like that, to which I don't personally want to get off the grid myself, but you know what I'm trying to get at here. What are some pointers that we could give people for saying, hey, these are the top 5 things? Maybe you can move to Bitcoin to get off of statism. Maybe you can try to I don't know, handle dispute resolution with your neighbor without going through the justice system. What are some options for you that you thought about that are external of statism that would help people move away from the state? Maybe agorist type mentality.
Oh yeah, definitely agorism. Barter. Basically, trying to do anything you can out of the system using Bitcoin, but like doing things under the table. I guess that could be considered illegal, but simply just talking to people or when you're interacting with someone, say you want to hire somebody. Try and barter with them. Try not to use Federal Reserve notes or even using a credit card or whatnot if you could use Bitcoin, but a lot of people still don't use Bitcoin. And in other issues, if you have a dispute with somebody, the last thing you should ever do is call the police and get the state involved. That's the last thing you ever want to do. If you have, I guess if there's a murder or something like that happens at your house, you might not have a choice in it. Right. But if you have a dispute with your neighbor or whatnot, try and work it out as individuals. Do not get people, don't sue them, don't get the courts involved. Because when you do that, how are those people even going to get paid? Those people are going to get paid by stealing more money from more people. So it's just doing everything you can not to do to get the state involved.
Yeah. Excuse me. I completely agree with you. I even say, like Stefan says, live without the state, live like there is no state. I say ignore the state altogether. Don't even try to give it credence or acceptance or any type of momentum in your life. Just cut it off. Just like the bad friends who are statists too. You got to kind of clear out your mentality and live that free lifestyle. I completely agree with you. So good stuff. A couple other questions I have for you. This one's on the war on drugs. So obviously we have, we're reaching about 1 million non-criminals in prison. In other words, I want to break this down for people. There's things called victimless crimes where people are arrested not because they hurt somebody else, but because the state says that they did something bad, and so they'll charge all of us. Really, it's a big money scheme. But, I want to hear your little spiel once again on the war on drugs. And talking about this million non-criminal population that happens to be in prison because of victimless crimes, and what's your whole mentality on the war on drugs? How deep does this thing really go?
The war on drugs is a war on the individual because it gives the state the ability to dictate that they own your body and they can tell you what you can or cannot put in your body. And on top of that, it helps support not just the military-industrial complex with like the war overseas and whatnot, but and in Central America, but also supports the prison complex and supports prisons. And it's sad that we have so many people still in this country that support throwing millions and millions of people in jail for putting a chemical in their body or owning a plant. And that in itself is just so sad. If you look at the per capita of how many people are in prison in this country, we're the least freest country in the world because we have more people in prison than any other country out there. And no, it's just absolutely horrible. One thing that's really great for anyone that hasn't checked it out, Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree documentary, like he gets thrown in jail for just smoking pot like in public and so much other stuff out there. There's so many victimless crimes that people are thrown in jail. That include besides drugs, tax evaders. Tax evaders are always looked down upon as like horrible people to the community. Those people should be held up as heroes for disobeying unjust laws.
Oops. Yep. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Sorry about that. Here, actually, I have Derek J coming up on my show on Monday. Ironic enough, yeah. Derek J's amazing.
Well, then I just plugged it for you.
Yeah, thanks. Free advertisement. Appreciate that. I guess this is kind of a question I didn't have going into our interview, but while we're on this topic, I think it's very crucial that we actually hit on this. When we're talking, you hear people talking about private Federal Reserve and private prisons and private Halliburton and private Raytheon and stuff like this, which maybe Raytheon is a little bit more private than Halliburton. But anyway, to me, anything that's government subsidized and government licensed and government backed and protected, That is not free market or private anything. I mean, what do you say to people who say, look at the private prison system? To me, I kind of say all they did was create a government institution on the side, put a nice little logo on it, and call it a corporation, and that's really government still. What are your thoughts on the whole private prison, private Fed, private, all this statist privatism?
Well, you know, in the eyes of the statists, I guess they are private, but in the eyes, from our point of view, they are not, because they wouldn't have the authority to do what they do if the state didn't give them that authority. Like, corporations are incorporated by the state. The individuals that run those corporations are no longer responsible for the most part, because they can just say, well, it's the corporation. They don't have any real responsibility when they do wrong. They just sue the company instead of suing the individual who is running that said company. But that's because the government gave them, you know, that authority. They're the ones that set that up. So if you want anyone to blame, it's the state, not the companies.
Yeah, I completely agree. So basically you're saying Halliburton is not a free market business, correct?
No. Well, I mean, you can make the argument that any business that's incorporated in this country is not a free market business.
Yeah, and I do make that case. I agree with you 100%. Speaking of corporations, that's kind of the next thing we're onto here. What is your mindset on corporations? It's kind of funny. This was the next question, but you know, what do you think of when you think of a free market system? Would it still have the ability to pool resources, but without government licensing and protectionism and backing?
Why wouldn't it? I mean, you'd be able to have voluntary interactions between people. If I want to purchase or trade for these goods to make my certain product, you know, whether it's using Bitcoin for that exchange or whatnot, or anything else, any other currency, I don't see why that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, and actually, if you tried to stop somebody else from that, you would be against freedom.
Yeah, in all honesty, if you opened it up, like, we would have so much prosperity if the state got out of the way.
Yeah,
period.
It's definitely true. I mean, all they can do is intervene. They don't have a revenue source of their own. They don't make a profit. All they can do is consume, right? So
yes.
You know, this is what we're faced with, is unfortunately corporations basically taking over the free market, calling themselves private and free market and the rest of this nonsense, when really it's just an extension of statism. Statism created corporations back in the 1500s out of Europe, and actually Rome had something similar, but it wasn't really considered a corporation. But, you know, this was started for the public good by governments, for government to make it easier for them to regulate and tax people. You know, the more oligopolized you can make the industry, the less businesses you have to run around to and point a gun at, right? So,
exactly.
You know, that's the way that corporations work. So it's funny, too, because, and I think you'd agree with me, Rob, what we've seen is as government grows, the gap between the rich and poor continues to grow, too. And you hear all these people complain about the gap between rich and poor, but they'll never look and see that we have 6 times more government than 105 years ago. Revenue per capita, inflation adjusted, obviously. So, you know, looking at the debt scenario that we're in and how these kids are just born with $100,000 price tags labeled to them before they breathe for the first time, what is this whole deal? If you could kind of go over how government gets its revenue, how it collects it. Obviously, it's through taxes, but you know, like, what is all this debt going to? Right? I mean, that's the question.
I guess it's going to elitist bankers. I honestly don't know. I mean, perfectly honest, the amount of debt that we have, if you want to say we, I hate using the word we. It's like a status word. I'm trying to break myself of it, but. In this country, like, all the debt, like, I don't know where it's going so much, and there's so much of it, I don't even know how it's even possible to even pay that back. You can confiscate the 100% wealth of every person on this land, and would that, fund the government for, like 6 months or 3 months or something like that? I mean, the debt is so large that it's probably impossible to pay, and why should we basically enslave children that haven't even been born yet? Why are we going to enslave them to something that they didn't even sign on to? Or I didn't even sign on to? Or you did?
Yeah, it comes back to the social contract once again. It always comes back to that pesky Spooner, huh? Good stuff. For people who might not know your website, obviously I'm going to put a little description link a link in the description section below for everybody to go check out his page. Make sure you guys subscribe as well. Voluntary Rebel is definitely going to be growing over the next year or two, or hopefully forever.
I hope so.
Yeah, right. What other websites, links do you got?
I have not created a website yet. I plan to in the future. So right now, me and my wife's computer got busted. We're on a low pay, whatnot. We're just getting by. And right now, I'm just, like I said, I'm doing all this from my smartphone. I'm using a tablet right now to chat with you. And that's it. So once I get a computer up and running, I'm going to make my own website and start blogging as well. But for most part, my Facebook, which is just Voluntarist Rebel, my YouTube channel, which is they're going to link, and that I'm really active on Twitter, which is just at Voluntary Rebel.
Yeah, and I've noticed there's quite a few different topics on your website, or on YouTube, excuse me. And
yes.
What is it? Do you focus mainly on ethical, philosophical, economic, militarism? If you could, kind of bundle it all up into a package. So I have some people who really love economics on my that are followers. I have some people that really are into militarism. What is it that really highlights what you're doing?
Basically, my channel is really dedicated to libertarians, constitutionalists, and patriots alike, just to kind of give them a little push off the cliff, so to speak. Say, hey, just let go of statism altogether. But I'll talk about any subject that, like, if someone will request, hey, can you do a video on this subject? I did my wife asked me, like, you should really talk about abortion and how there can be a free market solution to it. So, like, I did a video on that, and basically anything that deals with living in a voluntary society and a free society, I'll talk about a certain subject. And I try to keep it, right now I'm just trying to keep it down to at least under 5 minutes. I'll just talk about one subject and how voluntarism can fix or at least alleviate that said issue.
Amazing that you just brought up the abortion issue. I've had a lot of thought about that in the last week. Have you heard of evictionism?
Yes, I kind of talk about it where, just like, how with technology, how it's increasing at such a rapid space. I don't know if you ever heard of Ray Kurzweil and the Singularity event and stuff like that, but technology is increasing at such a fast pace. I mean, like what I'm doing right here, or what you're doing, we would have needed like a TV studio, satellite uplink, like a team of like 50 people and stuff like that. Now we're just using technology that we can hold in our hand. Evictionism is something where you can literally transplant the baby from one womb to another. I see that, if we can do that with organs, why can't we do that with a fetus in the future? That's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and I think, for those who are pro-choice, we're not anti-choice. I mean, we believe you have the right to evict the baby out of your body. You can do whatever you want. There's no government that's going to come around and tell you. This is more of an ethical discussion than anything, but I think it's still important for us to at least have hit on. So,
one thing, just to talk about it. One thing I kind of advocate is if you had a free market, you wouldn't have the state preventing you from paying a woman not to have an abortion. Like right now, there's so many families and so many couples that really want to adopt, but it costs tens of thousands of dollars, and it's so hard in this country to do so. That's why you see couples going overseas to Russia and China and whatnot, because it's so hard to do it here. If you can just bypass that entire system of bureaucracy and whatnot, and how long it takes to do so, and go straight to a woman and say, hey, I'll give you $20,000 not to abort that baby so we can raise it, and that will give that person another choice. Like if you're pro-choice, you should be able to be pro-choice of allowing people to pay that person not to do what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like a baby black market, huh?
Well, I know that sounds unethical to buy babies, and maybe it could theoretically create a system where it would be like a farming system. Maybe, I hope not. I mean, this is all hypothetical anyways. It doesn't exist today. But, I mean, how is that any different from going through an adoption agency?
Well, I think you could, you can do whatever you want for the money aspect, as long as you don't own the kid. Like, I don't
I'm not saying you would own the kid. Yeah, right. I'm not advocating ownership, but I'm just advocating that you can come to a term of agreement between a mother and another couple, so that a life isn't lost. I'm not saying you would ever end abortion, just like you're never going to end theft and murder, but I think it would help alleviate that issue.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, there's a lot of people out there who are just going to jump down my throat for... You sound like you're attacking pro-choice, Mike. Well, actually, really what I'm doing is just talking about evictionism. It's the merger of the two. One last part for this, real quick. This example that Walter Block uses is that the right believes in... not murdering the child, but also not allowing the mother to evict the child, whereas the Democrats believe in not allowing you to evict the child and allowing you to murder the child. There's actually like a little gray area in there where you can evict the child and nobody has to murder. So it's kind of like the compromise position. It's the ethical position, not that everybody's going to do it. I completely agree with you. Listen, Rob, anything you want to add before we get off this interview? Something that you just want to get off your chest, maybe some other voluntarists need to hear? What would be your words of wisdom to the rest of the voluntary and liberty community?
My one thing to tell people is stop thinking as a collective. You're an individual, and your actions that you take represent who you are. Don't be proud or rely on what a group of other people are doing. Whatever you do is, at the end of the day, that you can judge the character of somebody.
Yeah, so be the change you want to be in the world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, be the change you want to see. That's good stuff. You think you could join me here in a couple months? Maybe I'll even have you on before then again. Is that okay?
Oh, I'll be love to. It's been an honor to be on your show. You're inspiration for me.
Oh, well, I appreciate it, Rob. Everybody, go check out Voluntary Rebel. Type it on YouTube. Click on the little link below here in the description section. Hit that subscribe button. Let's help this young man get onto the map and push his career spreading the message, which I believe he does very well, of freedom forward. So thank you so much once again, Rob, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Yep, have a great day, everybody.
You too.